Welcome to this week's Chinuch Hashkafa message. It's Parshas Toilos. And this week I want to revisit something which we've talked about many times, but it's so important to come back to it again and again. And in this week's Parsha, there's a wonderful way through sharing a Rashi and a Dvar Torah connected to that Rashi to bring up this concept for discussion. The Torah tells us Vayihi Yitzchak. Yitzchak was 40 years old when he married Rivka, who was Bas Besuel Huarami. She was the daughter of Besuel. She was the sister of Lavan. She came from Padan Aram, and she became Yitzchak's wife. And Rashi points out, Rashi is obviously bothered, as explained in Rashi and in the Sifsei Chachamim, that we already know her family relationship. So why would the Torah want to repeat it? And Rashi says that it's repeated because to create an emphasis. The Torah wants to point out something very special from the fact that she comes from that family. As Rashi says, Lahagid Shivcha, to talk about Rivka's praise. That she was the daughter of a Rasha, she was the sister of a wicked person, she came from a society that was evil, and yet, V'loi lomda mima'aseim, she didn't learn from their ways. This concept that she was the daughter of a Rasha and a sister and so on, is emphasized in a word from the Chassam Sofer. The Chassam Sofer says on the next pasuk, where we learn that Yitzchak daven l'noichach ishtoi. Yitzchak daven, it looks like in the same room as Rivka, each one in a different corner, as we are taught. And he points out, he says that when you daven for someone, you're supposed to mention their parent's name. That's how we daven for people. We say the name and the parent's name, or the mother's name, whatever it is. But Yitzchak didn't want to do that, because Rivka came from wicked people. So that we know that we are taught that if you daven for someone in front of them, you need to mention their parent's name. That's why Yitzchak daven l'noichach ishtoi. Yitzchak daven in the same room as Rivka, so he shouldn't have to mention her parent's name. Just to emphasize again the background that she came from, and yet Rashi says, Lahagit Shivcha, we praise her, Shalom Mima'aseyim. And this is, Rashi is not a historic Rashi, it's an eternal message. One of the greatest problems we experience today in Chinuch is peer pressure, social pressure. And one of the things that we have to do from very early on, which can be done at a discussion at a Shabbos table or with a walk through these Divrei Torah, because it doesn't help really just to lecture, it needs to come from a Dvar Torah, from a discussion, is we have to instill the pride of Ge'oin Yaakov, for a child to feel strong, to be different, proud to be different. And this is a perfect Rashi to bring up for discussion that Rivka was one person in an entire evil neighborhood. Parents that weren't good, friends that weren't good, a society that wasn't good. And yet she stood strong. She was proud to be who she was. She was proud to keep Torah mitzvahs. That's the greatness of Rivka. And we need to develop this idea to make our children understand that it's no different today. Baruch Hashem, hopefully we don't live in such a terrible environment like Rivka. Hopefully we have good homes. But nevertheless, each child in their own way, and we need to be honest about this, sometimes experiences social pressure. Why do all the children in my class, how come they are allowed to do this and I can't? How come they all have technology and mine is more limited, or whatever it is, or they dress in a certain way and you don't want me to dress that way, or you want me to learn, they not learning, or they making fun, or they misbehaving, whatever the issue might be at hand. And rather than being harsh about it, we need to lift our children up and say, learn from Rivka. Look, Rivka was proud, she was strong, and she became even stronger by the fact that she could withstand that pressure, because she knew who she was, she knew how special she was, she knew what kind of greatness she can achieve by standing up strong and not learning and not bowing to the pressure. And we are all Bnei Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, and the children of Sarah, Rivka, Rachel, and Leah. So we have the strength of all the Avos and the Imois. So we have the strength of Rivka. We have the strength of Avram Avinu, who stood up to the whole world. We have the strength of Rivka also, who stood up to a whole society when she was very young. And she didn't learn from them. And of course, one of the things we as parents need to reflect on, are we that way? Are we showing an example? Because as we know, to teach values, we can't just lecture. We need to live it. Do we do, maybe not such terrible things, but do we do things sometimes just because of the neighbors looking? Do we spend money sometimes just to create an image because everyone else is doing it? Do we bow on our level even if it's not maybe very bad things, but do we bow on some level to social pressure, or do we always focus on what is the right thing to do? What is the way, what does Hashem want me to do, notwithstanding what is going on around me, and do we feel strong about it and proud about it? Our children need to see that on us as well, and then we need to talk to them, building them up of they are B'nai Avram, Yitzchak, V'Yakov, B'nai Sarah, Rivka, Rachel, and Leah, and they have the koyach, they have the strength to stand up to their pressure, not to learn from anyone else. Have a wonderful day and a good Shabbos.